وسخرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تأتي كل صواب اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغسل النقاب اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدموع اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك واستشفع بك إلى نفسي وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا اللهم أسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قمرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيته، وكم من مكروه دفعته، وكم من ثناء جميل لست ولا لو نشرته. اللهم أعظم بلائي وافرط بي سوء حالي، وقصرت بي أعمالي، وقادت بي أغلالي، وحبسني عن نفع بعد آمالي، وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها، ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت علي من سر، ولا تعجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملت في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلاتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، من لي غيرك، أسأل كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترز فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدود، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا يجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في ساعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي، يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج بي لساني من ذكرك، واعتقدوا ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك، هيات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته، أو تباعد من أدنيته، أو تشرد من آويته، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة، وبشكرك مادحة، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طاعات، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنات. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثور، يسير بقاء، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته، ويدوم مقامه، ولا يخفف علي، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك. وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات ولا يا سيدي، فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين، يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها ضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته. فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك، صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وابني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك، أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك، ورجائي عفوك. فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لأن تركتني ناطقا، لأضجن إليك بين لأضجيج نائمين، ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولا أنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية للعارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب القلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسانه لتوحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي. فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلم النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجر زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين يقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأ من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد في المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك. قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من علي جريتها أن تابلي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب ذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته وأظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزل أو إحسان تفضل أو بر تنشر أو رزق تبسط أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستره يا ربي جميعا يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيدي ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي. أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة، وبخدمتك موصولة، وأعمالي عندك مقبولة، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من علي مولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي. قوي على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وأبلي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك أدنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكيد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك ليجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثراتي، واغفر زلاتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. وإلى أرواح أموات الحاضرين والجامعين والمشاهدين نهدي لهم جميعا ثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
نوروا مجالسكم بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. صل على محمد وآل محمد. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. عظم الله أجوركم جميعا. It's an honor to host you once again on this two-night Haraka Muharram special. Inshallah, before we begin and we welcome our esteemed guest, Sheikh Azhar Nasser, just a couple of announcements. The first of all being, my dear brothers, this area from here to that line is for you to sit in. And inshallah, so the majlis, when it begins, so the majlis is not disturbed. I'm going to please ask you, similar to the sisters are all crammed forward, if you could all get up from where you're sitting, especially the brothers on the back, God bless you, on the right, on the left. Come forward as close as you can to the minbar, so we can make sure we maintain the right etiquette of the majlis. Jazakum Allah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. God bless you, brothers. Thank you very much. Inshallah, just a couple of announcements. First and foremost, as you entered today, on the sister side and also on the brother's side, you can see a table for merchandise. Just to let you know, every single item on that table is a donation to a worthy cause. So you'll see there are some items of clothing, there are some kids' books, there are some books for adults. In particular, there are 2 books written by our dear guest, Sheikh Azhar, and they're all available, and all the money and the proceeds goes to a worthy cause, of the cause of Imam Al-Hussain alayhi salam, including regular Haraka Al-Hussainiya programs that are held in this location every Thursday throughout the year. That's number 1. Number 2, inshallah, Haraka Tours is going once again to the holy land of Karbala on Ziyarat al-Arba'in, and joining us, of course, is Sheikh Azhar Nasser, as well as Haj Mustafa Mas'oud, Mullah Ali Fadl, and many more. So you can find the details on our Instagram. There are also flyers available on the table. I know that Ziyarat al-Arba'in is very, very soon, but there are just a few more spaces available. So if you're interested, please let us know. And alongside that, our ziyarah for the Christmas break has been announced, and you can find details on our Instagram page. It gives us very, very great honor to welcome our dear guest, our dear friend, Sheikh Azhar Nasser. Our esteemed guest has been already reciting for 10 days, so we know it's difficult for him to make the journey to London from other parts of the UK. We're very, very grateful. And inshallah, tonight the topic, and also for tomorrow night, is going to be coping with grief and loss. So inshallah, if you can join me in welcoming our dear Sheikh, our esteemed guest, in 3 salawats, the first of which in memory of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali. Our second of salawats in memory of Sayyidain Shabab Ahl al-Jannah al-Hasan wal-Hussain. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And as always, our third of salawats to hasten the reappearance of our 12th and awaited Savior, Imam Al-Hujjah Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Al-Sharif. Please, the warmest and loudest of salawats ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة. يا ليتنا فيا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. قال تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كل نفس ذائقة الموت وإنما توفون أجوركم يوم القيامة، فمن زحزح عن النار وأدخل الجنة فقد فاز، وما الحياة الدنيا إلا متاع الغرور. صدق الله العلي العظيم. عطروا أفواهكم وزينوا مجالسكم بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Each and every one of us will inevitably endure some sort of loss in this life. No matter who you are, a man, a woman, a child, whether you're wealthy, rich, whatever your condition is in this life, there is one thing that is certain, and that is you will experience grief and loss. The Holy Quran, in fact, tells us, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. Allah says, we created man to endure hardship. Because through hardship, the soul is developed. This is the design of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the plan of Allah for you and I to go through the fire of trial and tribulation. Because we know that the human soul is like a piece of gold. And in order for this piece of gold to shine, to become luminous, it has to be exposed to fire, to intense heat. Now, one of the greatest forms of loss that we experience in this life is the loss of loved ones. One of the greatest trials and tribulations that we endure in this life is when we lose the ones who are most beloved to us. And the reason why I decided to address this topic in particular is because when you look at the story of Ashura, you see that, yes, Imam Al-Hussain alayhi salam sacrificed. He gave everything in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. the post-Ashura narrative is a story about how the women and the children coped with that great loss. How they coped with that loss and that grief, and yet maintained their honor and their dignity. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, beginning tonight and tomorrow, I want to speak about what Islam teaches us with respect to how we deal with the loss of beloveds. How do we cope with that devastating void that we feel when our beloved mothers pass away, when our fathers depart this world, when we lose siblings who are very dear to us, when we have to bury our children? How do we pick up the pieces and move on? What does Islam teach us in regards to coping mechanisms and coping strategies? Now, to begin our discussion, one of the most important coping mechanisms is to accept the reality of death. This is the most important. To accept the inevitability of the temporary nature of this world. There are many people, death and mortality is something that they avoid. They know they might have theoretically accepted it, but their hearts have not absorbed this reality. You know, it's possible to believe in something with your mind, but not to accept it with your heart. I'll give you a simple example. We all know that a dead body cannot cause us harm. Your mind tells you that a mayyit cannot hurt me. That's what your mind says. But if I tell you that you need to sleep in a room where there's a janazah in the corner, will you be able to sleep? Many people wouldn't be able to. Because their heart rejects what their mind has accepted. For many of us, yes, we believe, we acknowledge the inevitability of death on a mental level, on a theoretical level, but our hearts have not surrendered to this. You know, when you look at the words of the Prophet, there's a very beautiful narration that's attributed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a conversation between him and Jibreel. And this is a narration that is found in both Sunni and Shi'i hadith references. I'll just mention the beginning of it because that's what's relevant to our discussion. Jibreel comes to the Prophet and he says what? Ya Muhammad. La basallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ya Muhammad, ish ma shi't, fa innaka mayyitun. O Muhammad, live as long as you like, but eventually you're going to die. You have to leave. You have to leave this world. وَأَحْبِبْ مَنْ شِئْتْ فَإِنَّكَ مُفَارِقُهُ. And love whoever you want to love, but eventually you will have to be separated from your beloved. We read these ahadith. We all know that we're going to leave this world. We all know that our parents are going to die. Our siblings are going to die. We're all going to die. The people who you love, they're all going to perish. But how do we internalize this? You see, brothers and sisters, internalizing the reality of death is not necessarily going to take the pain away, but it will make you more prepared. It will make you more prepared when that moment arrives so you don't lose yourself. You might not be able to hold back your tears. It's natural to cry. But some of us, we shed our tears and we also shed our faith because we haven't prepared. We haven't mentally prepared for the inevitable. So how do we internalize the reality of death? How do we transfer that ma'rifah from the mind to the heart, where it becomes something real? It's not just this distant reality. It's something that is visceral. It's something that we experience. The Quran gives us a way to mentally prepare for death. Something that we do actually every single day of our lives. What does the Quran say? Surah Az-Zumar, verse 42. It's a brilliant ayah, amazing verse of the Quran. Allahu yatawaffa al-anfusa hina mawtiha wallati lam tamut fi manamiha. The verse says, Allah takes the souls of those who die. Allahu yatawaffa al-anfusa hina mawtiha. We all know that. That's obvious. Allah takes the souls when people die. That's pretty obvious. But what's not very obvious is the second part. وَالَّتِي لَمْ تَمُتْ فِي مَنَامِهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also takes your soul when you sleep. Every time you sleep, whether it's a nap in the day, or it's 7 and 8 or 8 hours of sleep at night, Allah takes your soul every night. And then what does the ayah say? فَيُمْسِكُ الَّتِي قَضَى عَلَيْهَا الْمَوْتِ. There are some people who die in their sleep. The reason why they die is because Allah holds on to their soul. The verse says, فَيَمْسِكُ الَّتِي قَضَى عَلَيْهَا الْمَوْتِ وَيُرْسِلُ الْأُخْرَى إِلَىٰ أَجْلٍ مُسَمَّى. When you wake up, the reason why you wake up, yes, there may be physiological processes at play, but the reason you wake up is because Allah released your soul. He sent it back. So this ayah is actually reframing sleep for us. That every night when your mother, your father, your children, your siblings, even when you go to sleep, Allah is giving you a little taste of what is coming. Some of you are thinking, I should have never came to this lecture. Shaykh is terrifying us. But as we will see, many of us, we fear death because we don't really understand it. And people fear what they don't know. They fear the unknown. We'll discuss that shortly, inshallah. So the Quran here is telling us what? Allah is basically saying that death should not come as a surprise to you. I am so compassionate and I'm so merciful that every day I'm giving you a little taste of it. I send back the souls. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. These are signs. You know, if you look at human beings, we have three conditions. And these three conditions are related to the connection between the body and the soul. Condition number one is when you are alive and awake. When you are alive and awake, there is a full connection between the body and the soul. When you are dead, there is no more connection between the body and the soul. There's been a complete separation. When you are alive and asleep, there is a partial connection between the body and the soul. So before that complete disconnection happens, Allah doesn't throw it on you abruptly. No. Allah says, I'll give it to you. You know, just like when you want to give a shot to a little kid, you do it gradually. You try to kind of make them feel comfortable. Allah does this with all of us. He gives you a taste of this semi-death every single night. But the problem is what? These are ayat for people who reflect. The problem is, many of us are not people who reflect. And when death comes, it comes as a shock. But if you start to look at sleep as a temporary, as a minor death, when the major death happens, you'll be more ready to handle that difficulty. In fact, we have a dua from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, la basallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, where he teaches you and I what to say when we wake up. Alhamdulillahi alladhi ahyana ba'dama amatana. Praise be to Allah who revived us after He caused us to die. Because when you sleep, you went into, Allah took your soul. Allah took your soul when you were asleep. Now, this is number one. So the first thing that we have to remember, brothers and sisters, is we have to start reminding ourselves of death. And it's not enough to just listen to a majlis every once in a while. The sunnah of the Prophet was to constantly remember that inevitable transition from alamul dunya to alamul akhirah. This was the practice of the Prophet. The Prophet used to say, "Akthiru min dhikr al-maut." Remember death frequently. You know, brothers and sisters, I'll tell you from my own personal life, last year, from the city of Najaf, I purchased the kafan that I've been looking for. Because it's mustahab to have certain things written on your kafan. I took this kafan. And many people, when they buy a kafan, you know, it's not something that you really want in your face every day of your life. Many people, they'll put it away in the back of the closet, put it in the basement. I decided to do something a little bit different. I put it in my closet. And every day in the morning, when I go into my closet, I see, as I'm choosing what I'm going to wear for that day, my kafan is right there, front and center, in front of me. So as I'm preparing my day, I have a visual reminder of what I will be wearing on the final day. Try this. Try it. Believe me, brothers and sisters, these are the reminders that we need. Have that kafan in front of you. It will change you, believe me. If you're having a bad day, you had a fight with this person or that person, believe me, when you see the kafan that is going to shroud your body, you know, a kafan has a very powerful way of reminding you of what the priorities are in this life. So reminding yourself of the inevitable. It's going to happen to all of us. There's a beautiful narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi alayhi. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, لو أن أحدا يجد إلى البقاء سلما أو لدفع الموت سبيلا لكان ذلك سليمان بن داود. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, if there was anyone who could ascend the ladder of eternity or repel the path of death, it would have been Sulaiman, the son of Dawood, الذي, the one to whom Allah, الذي سخر له ملك الجن والإنس. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made human beings and jinn subservient to Sulaiman. مع النبوة وعظيم الزلفى. In addition to dunya, Allah also gave him akhirah. He was a king. He had everything. And he was a prophet who attained proximity to his Lord. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, if there's anyone that could have escaped it, it would have been Sulaiman. Now look at what Allah tells us about Sulaiman in the Quran, how he died. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Saba, verse 14, فَلَمَّا قَضَيْنَا عَلَيْهِ الْمَوْتِ. When we decreed death for Sulaiman, مَا دَلَّهُمْ عَلَى مَوْتِهِ إِلَّا دَابَّةُ الْأَرْضِ تَأْكُلُ مِنْ سَأَتَهُ. Look at how suddenly death came to Sulaiman. The king, King Sulaiman, the great prophet of God. He was standing on his balcony and he was leaning on his staff. Malakul Maut took him as he was standing. And he was leaning. And the jinn and all of the people, they're working. They think that Sulaiman is watching them because the balcony was very high up on the palace. The Quran tells us the only thing that indicated to them that Sulaiman had died, there was a termite that ate away at his staff and he fell. Death is real, brothers and sisters. Our lives are very temporary. We have to internalize this. And we internalize it by reframing sleep, buying a kafan. It's mustahab to buy a kafan. And believe me, some people, they have anxiety. Shaykh, if I buy a kafan, does that mean that I'm going to die sooner? No, you're not going to die sooner. Buy that kafan. You need it. Visit the graves. Go visit the graves, brothers and sisters. Visit the qubur. The Prophet used to visit the graves on a regular basis. This is the Prophet who is constantly reminding himself about death. We need more reminders than the Prophet, believe me. So this is number one. Now, when we experience loss, sometimes the reality starts to hit you. Your mother is ill. Your father is sick. And I've seen this happen all the time. You go to the hospitals and the children are around their father. They're waiting. They're kind of anticipating the inevitable. They're in a state of grief. Sometimes we become so consumed with our grief that we don't realize that when you look at the Islamic instructions on what to do when someone is dying or after someone has died, you realize that one of the best things to do to cope with grief is to make yourself useful. It's very important. Make yourself useful. Gain and give. What do I mean by this? There's a beautiful narration, and this narration is mentioned in Al-Kafi. Shaykh Al-Kulayni, he mentions this riwayah. You guys are all familiar with the concept of ihtidhar. A muhtadhir is someone who's on their deathbed, someone who is dying. They haven't died yet, but they are in their last moments. And by the way, muhtadhir comes from the verb hadara, which means to be present. And there's a debate among the ulama as to why a dying person is called muhtadhir from the verb hadara. Some have said because when people are dying, their family is usually present. Others say because when someone is dying, shaitan is present. Because shaitan, he waits to cause you to deviate in your last moments. In any case, the narration says, the narration is from Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi alayhi. By the way, I said this in Wessex and I'll say it to this jama'ah as well. There are way too many people in this hall for this salawat to be that quiet. There's a hadith from the Prophet, from Ahlul Bayt. They say, raising your voice in salawat removes nifaq from the hearts. So if we want to protect our hearts from those traces of hypocrisy, whenever there is a call for salawat, you recite it in the loudest of your voice. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. قال أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام دخل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله على رجل من ولد عبد المطلب وهو في السوق The hadith says from Amir al-Mu'mineen that the Prophet, he entered into a room, he visited one of his cousins, one of the sons of Abdul Muttalib, one of his relatives. وَهُوَ فِي السَّوْقِ. Sawq means حالة النزع. He was in his last moments. The hadith says what? وَقَدْ وُجِّهَ لِغَيْرِ الْقِبْلَةِ. This man, who's a relative of the Prophet, he was dying, but he wasn't facing the Qibla. Now, what does it mean to face the Qibla when you're dying? If you're laying in a bed, facing the Qibla means that if you were to sit up, your face would be in the direction of the Qibla. So you're on your back, the bottom of your feet is facing the Qibla. This is what it means, tawjih al-Qibla. So the Prophet sees that this person is dying and he's not facing the Qibla. And of course, everyone in the room is what? They're grieving. They're preparing themselves for the ultimate loss of their relative. But everyone is forgetting to do what? To do what is actually going to benefit the mayyit. To give. To do something that's going to benefit this person and to gain. To do something that's going to elevate you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The best way to cope with grief and loss is to pause and ask yourself, how can I make myself useful? So what does the Prophet do? The Prophet says, وَجِّهُوهُ إِلَى الْقِبْلَةِ. Direct him towards the Qibla. Orient his body towards the Qibla. And by the way, all of the fuqaha of the Shia, when it comes to this issue of directing towards the Qibla, when someone is dying, it's either fatwa or ihtiyat wujubi, based on these narrations. وَجِّهُوهُ إِلَى الْقِبْلَةِ. Why? What's the benefit? فَإِنَّكُمْ إِذَا فَعَلْتُمْ ذَلِكَ أَقْبَلَتْ إِلَيْهِ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. Because if you direct someone towards the Qibla when they are dying, the angels come and they receive him. And the hadith says what? وَأَقْبَلَ اللَّهُ بِوَجْهِهِ. I've seen this happen many times. You go to a hospital and the doctor says, this person has a day or two to live. And you see, some of the families, they just don't know. But some of us, we become so consumed with our own grief, how we feel, that we forget to do what is actually going to benefit the one who we love. So immediately when you receive that news, that's what you have to do. You orient that person towards the Qibla, the awliya of the person who's dying. You do that. And look at the Sharia. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is involving you in this process. Yes, it's a devastating loss, but the Sharia is inviting you to do something that will allow you to please Allah and will allow the mayyit to benefit. And I've seen this happen all the time. I've seen many people, brothers and sisters, you arrive, right? Because when do they call the Maulanas? When there's a wedding and there was a death, an istikhara, of course. You go to the hospital, the person has died. And they died in this position. And you take out, you try to find the Qibla, he's not facing the Qibla. He died not facing the Qibla. How much unnecessary suffering have we caused because we don't know the basics of our deen? How many people could have been received by legions of angels if we simply opened up the Risala Amaliyah of our Maraja? We know everything, but we don't know what Allah requires of us in these moments. We have to know. Because believe me, this is true love. This is where you show your love, where you do everything to ensure that your beloved, your mother, your father, your sibling, your son, your daughter has a smooth transition to Alamul Akhirah. This is the best gift. This will make it easier for you to cope, that you sent them off in a way that was honorable. But the way we're going to do this is that we have to take our deen seriously. So when it comes to tawjihul mayyit, Now sometimes people who are going through that difficulty, who are on their deathbeds, some people experience agonizing pain. They know that they're dying, but they're going through a lot, excruciating pain. Ahlul Bayt have taught us what to do when the mayyit is enduring a lot of suffering on their deathbed. Ahlul Bayt have not left us in the dark. In a narration from Imam al-Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi, Allahumma salli ala. Again, the narration is in Al-Kafi. Shaykh Al-Kulayni reports, إِذَا عُسِرَ عَلَى الْمَيِّتِ, from Imam al-Sadiq. إِذَا عُسِرَ عَلَى الْمَيِّتِ مَوْتُهُ وَنَزْعُهُ. If death is very painful for the person, and the removal of their soul is not happening, it's very, very intense, and they're in agony, what do you do? قُرِّبْ إِلَى الْمُصَلَّى الَّذِي كَانَ يُصَلِّي فِيهِ. You want to make it easier for them? You want to reduce that spiritual pain? You want to make that transition easier for them? Imam al-Sadiq says, relocate them to the place that they used to pray. Now this is very difficult in the hospitals, but in the past when people used to be at home, if they're experiencing the pangs of death and it's painful, you take them to the place that they used to speak to Allah, a place of barakah, a place of blessings, and this facilitates an easy release. So again, when we go through these periods of loss and we're anticipating loss, we're anticipating that grief, grieve, feel sad, cry, but gain and give. Don't forget to be useful. Don't forget to be useful in those moments. Another issue that we often forget to keep in mind, and that is talqeen. We all know what talqeen is. When I say the word talqeen, talqeen means dictation. You dictate the correct belief system of the individual. The aqa'id, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad, all of the established beliefs. People recite talqeen usually when we go to the cemetery, right? Ahlul Bayt, they say there are 3 times when you should recite talqeen. When a person is on their deathbed, they're not dead yet, recite talqeen there. In fact, we have a narration from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet says, "Uhduru mawtakum walaqinuhum." Be present when your people are dying, when your family is dying. Be there and dictate to them. Do talqeen. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, فَإِنَّ الْحَلِيمَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ وَالنِّسَاءِ يَتَحَيَّرُ عِنْدَ ذَلِكَ الْمَصْرَعِ. Because people are bewildered. When death descends, you know, sometimes people say, Shaykh, I'm ready for munkar and nakir. I'm ready for the qabr because I memorized. I just memorized my aqa'id. I memorized the names of the imams. Yes, they are stored in your memory. Are they stored in your heart, in your soul? What is stored in the mind, you'll forget it. Have you ever prepared for an exam and you were so nervous that they give you the exam and you go blank? You can't remember anything. If you want to pass these stages, these spiritual truths cannot just be downloaded into your mind. They have to be downloaded into your soul. And the only way they are downloaded into your soul is iman and amal salih. There are many people, yes, they might believe in Allah, they believe in Ahlul Bayt, but they don't pray. I have news for you. The fact that you don't pray means that there is a very high chance that you will relinquish your iman when you're on your deathbed. You won't be able to hold on to it because it was on your tongue, it was in your head, it wasn't in your heart. And only that which is cemented in the heart remains. That's what remains. And it takes a lifetime to embed these truths into the human soul. So the Prophet says, وَإِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ أَقْرَبُ مَا يَكُونُ مِنْ ابْنِ آدَمَ عِنْدَ ذَلِكَ الْمَصْرَعِ. Shaitan has been after you from the moment you became baligh. He's been close. The narrations say that Shaitan flows through you like blood flows through your veins. The Prophet says Shaitan is the closest to you when you're on your deathbed. He has hope that maybe in that final moment, I'll cause you to deviate. That's why we have to be very careful. Dua al-adila. It's a very important dua to ensure that we don't lose our faith in those final moments. Now, after a person dies, what do you do? Is it okay to cry, to weep, to allow yourself to feel that loss? You know, brothers and sisters, when the Prophet speaks about loss and grief, these words are not coming from someone who had a comfortable, easy life. When the Prophet speaks about loss and grief, these words are not only coming from the Messenger of Allah, they're coming from a messenger of God who had to actually bury his own kids. The Prophet knows what he's saying. Experience and revelation. When the Prophet lost his son Ibrahim from Maria al-Qibtiyya, the Prophet ﷺ, he was crying during the funeral. Yes, the Prophet was crying. Some of the Sahaba, they looked at the Prophet. Ya Rasulullah, this is you crying? What happened to I thought we're supposed to be patient. I see that you're weeping, you're crying. This individual who was questioning the Prophet, he did not understand the meaning of sabr. So what does the Prophet say? He says, إِنَّ الْعَيْنَ تَدْمَعْ وَالْقَلْبَ يَحْزَنْ. He says, the eye is tearful and the heart grieves. وَلَا نَقُولُ إِلَّا مَا يُرْضِ رَبَّنَا. The eye is filled with tears. Cry, you're human. It's a sign of rahmah. Feel grief. No one is saying that you can't feel grief. Amir al-Mu'mineen built Baytul Ahzan for Sayyidah Fatima. There's nothing wrong with grief. The eye is tearful, the heart grieves, but we don't say anything that would displease Allah. The Prophet is setting the baseline for sabr. We'll speak about the higher levels of sabr, but the baseline for us is what? Cry, weep, but don't say anything un-Islamic. Don't say, oh Allah, how could you do this to me? You are unfair. When you look at the women of Karbala, I don't know what is more amazing, the sacrifice of the men or the patience of the women. I don't know what is more mind-boggling, the sacrifice and the valor of the men or the sabr of the women. If you look at the reports that we have, there were many mothers who lost children on the day of Ashura. There were wives who lost husbands, newlyweds. Many mothers lost children, wives lost husbands. But there is not a single statement from any of them where they say, oh Allah, where are you? Why did you take my son away? What did I do to deserve this? All of them exhibited beautiful patience. They cried. Sayyidah Zainab cried. Al-Rabab cried. They all lamented. They mourned. But do you know what else they did? They made themselves useful. They made themselves useful. How did they make themselves useful? Sayyidah Zainab made a vow that yes, I lost my brother Hussein, and I am grieving, and I am crying, but I will make myself useful, and I will tell the world what happened in Karbala. Al-Rabab, she lost her husband, Imam al-Hussein. She lost her child. She grieved. When she went back to Medina, she had the mindset of what? Yes, I'm going to cope with this loss by making myself useful. Remove the roof. How can I shade myself when the son of Fatima was exposed to the sun? I'm not going to let people forget what happened to Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. This is what we have to remember, my dear brothers and sisters. And this is the beauty of Ahlul Bayt. Grieve, cry, experience the full spectrum of human emotions, but don't forget to be useful. Because I'll tell you this, my dear brothers and sisters. If you make the pursuit of happiness your ultimate goal in life, you're going to be miserable. But if you make the purpose of your life to be useful to the people around you, you will live a joyful life, a life that uplifts people, and a life that is pleasing to Allah. In these nights, my dear brothers and sisters, we remember those women and children. You know, brothers and sisters, many of you have been to the Arba'een. You've walked from Najaf to Karbala. And when you arrive in Karbala, you know how it feels. Your feet are swollen. All you want to do is just sleep. Completely and utterly exhausted. And this is how you feel when you are walking down a path where everyone is serving you, where people are giving you food, they're giving you water, they're offering you shelter, they are willing to massage your feet. But was this the journey of Zainab? Was this the journey of Sukaina? Next time you go for Arba'een and you feel tired when you arrive, remember the exhaustion of Zainab. Remember what they endured. All so we can know what happened. It is narrated by Sahel ibn Sa'ad as-Sa'idi, one of the companions of the Prophet. He says, خرجت إلى بيت المقدس حتى توسطت الشام. Sahel says, I was heading towards Jerusalem and I passed through Damascus on my way to Jerusalem. He says, I arrived in Jerusalem and I saw that the entire city was decorated. I saw that it was a festive atmosphere. I saw that everyone was jubilating. وَالنَّاسُ يَفْرَحُونَ مُسْتَبْشِرُونَ. Everyone was happy, laughing, singing, celebrating. فَقُلْتُ فِي نَفْسِي لعل لأهل الشام عيدا لا نعرفه نحن. He says, I said to myself, maybe the people of Sham have an Eid that we're not familiar with. He says, I saw some men conversing an earshot away from me. He says, I went to them and I said to them, أَلِأَهْلِ الشَّامِ عِيدٌ لَا نَعْرِفُهُ. They said to him, يَا شَيْخ نَرَاكَ غَرِيبًا. They say to him, it seems that you're a stranger. قال نعم أنا سهل ابن سعد الساعدي قد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسمعت حديثا. He says, yes, I'm the companion of the Prophet. I am from Medina. I saw the Prophet and I heard his hadith. They say to him, يا سهل ما أعجبك السماء لا تمطر دما والأرض لا تخسف بأهلها. Oh Sahel, we are amazed that the sky is not raining blood. We are surprised and amazed that the ground is not quaking beneath our feet. He asked them, وَلِمَ ذَاكَ? They say to him, هَذَا رَأْسُ الْحُسَيْنِ يُهْدَى مِنْ أَرْضِ الْعِرَاقِ إِلَى الشَّامِ. They say to him, this is the head of Hussein being paraded from Iraq to Sham. Sahel says, رأس الحسين يهدى والناس يفرحون. He says the head of Hussein is being paraded and people are celebrating this. He asked the man, where can I find the head of Hussein? They say to him, Ya Shaykh, go to that gate, go to the entrance of Babu Sa'at. Sahel ibn Sa'ad, he says, I went through the crowds until I reached Babu Sa'at. وإذا بفارس بيده رمح منزوع السنان. He says, I went to the gate and I saw a horseman holding a spear, but there was no spear on top. He says, what did he see? He says, I saw a head ولكن عليه راس. What kind of head did he see? من أشبه الناس وجها برسول الله. He says, I saw a face. I have never seen a face that resembles the face of Rasulullah like that face. He says, I looked at that face and I saw that there were women and children behind the head. He says, there was one young lady who caught my eye, who looked very grieved, who was broken. He says, I went to one of the ladies and I said to her, Ya Jariya man anti. I went to one of the young ladies and I said to her, oh young lady, who are you? She said to him, أنا سكينة بنت الحسين. I am Sukaina, the daughter of Hussein. He says to her, O daughter of Aba Abdullah, أنا سهل بن سعد الساعدي. I am a companion of your grandfather Rasulullah. هل لك من حاجة? Is there anything that I can do for you? What does she say? She says, يا سهل قل لصاحب الرأس أن يتقدم أمامنا. Oh Sahel, go to the man who is holding the head of Hussein and tell him to go forward حتى يشتغل الناس بالنظر إليه, so that the people can look at the head of Hussein and they don't look at the daughters of Rasulullah. فنحن حرم رسول الله. Imagine, even in that moment they are thinking about their hijab, they're thinking about their modesty. She says, move the head of my father so the strange men can look at the head of my father and not our faces. Another narration says, Sahel, he sees a man among them. He goes to him. He discovers that it is Imam Zainul Abidin. He goes to the Imam and says, Ya ibn Rasulillah, Mawlai, hal laka min haja. Do you need anything from me? How can I help you, Ya ibn Rasulillah? What does the Imam say? قال يا سهل هل عندك ثوب عتيق. Oh Sahel, do you have an old garment? يا ابن رسول الله أنتم تهدون الثياب الثمينة وتسألني ثوبا ماليا. يا ابن رسول الله, you come from a family, you always give the best of clothes. You're asking me for a rag. ما تصنع به? What do you want to do with a rag? He says, أضعه تحت الجامعة, because I want to put the rag under this metal collar around my neck. فإنها أكلت عنقي. He says, because my neck is cutting open from these shackles. Sal says, I gave the Imam this rag. He says, I gave the rag to the Imam. فَلَمَّا رَفَعَ الْجَامِعَةِ, when Imam al-Sajjad lifted that collar, he's had this collar around his neck from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Sham. He lifts the shackle. The narration says, فَسَالَتِ الدِّمَاءُ مِنْ تَحْتِهَا. The blood began to pour from the neck of Imam Zainul Abidin. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Please rise in honor of the women and children of Karbala as we mourn. Please come as far forward as you can towards the minbar so that we can start with the elegies, inshallah. Brothers, come as far forward as you can, inshallah, so we can start with the elegies with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Come as far forward as you can, please, inshallah. Ay Hussein wa Musaba. وآية حسين ومصابة وزينب تيوين ويتنادي. صوتكم شباب, بارك الله بكم. Come as far forward as you can to the minbar. وزينب تيوين ويتنادي. ويا حسين يا ذكرك بطرف لساني. وحاشاك لليوم الوعد تنساني يا حسين. وزينب تيوين ويتنادي. As I mentioned, we're remembering the women and children, especially in this Natmiya and this elegy, and one specific young girl of Imam Al-Hussain alayhi salam we remember tonight, and we all say in one voice, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. words, inshallah, all together. Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. Let me hear your voices. Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. Where's your voices? Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. Karbala sand, I know it burns. Karbala sand, I know it burns. Just like the tears that sting your cheek. And I understand, I felt your thirst to ease your fears. You'll hear me speak. Karbala sands, I know it burns, just like the tears that sting your cheek. And I understand, I felt your thirst to ease your fears. You'll hear me speak. Oh, my daughter, look to the sky. Oh, my daughter, look to the sky and see your father on a spear of blood held high. To bring water, I know you'll try, even though the pain of their ropes has made you cry. Even though the pain of their ropes has made you cry. The pain it brings me knowing that I can't help you. It makes me cry knowing what they will put you through. They'll put you through with the weight of their chains, with the weight of their chains and the cries of your pain. We all watch from above. We all watch from above. When they laugh when you fall, may Allah curse them all. Please be patient, my love. Please be patient, my love. Just like Zainab, just like Zainab. Promise me, daughter, you'll stay strong until we meet. Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. Voices. Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. With the daughter of Imam Al-Hussainiya, Ya Ruqayya. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Ya Ruqayya. Let me hear that name again. Ya Ruqayya. And as the night breaks into dawn, and as the night breaks into dawn, your shoulders bruised from their abuse. Your shoulders bruised from their abuse. His left and right, Abbas is gone. We'd protect you, but it's no use. But it's no use. And as the night breaks into dawn, your shoulders bruised from their abuse. His left and right, Abbas is gone. We'd protect you, but it's no use. He pulled it off, blood from your ear. He pulled it bit of blood from your ear. How can a princess be treated with so much hate? And as they laugh, your fate you near. Trust me, daughter, that my Shia will not forget. Trust me, daughter, that my Shia will not forget. No joy to find, my dear, now it's only sadness. Your eyes were filled with light, but now only darkness, only darkness. The slaps on your soft face, the slaps on your soft face. You can't escape the chase. You can't escape the chase. It breaks my heart to see. It breaks my heart to see. Your heart was once of gold. Now your pure heart's turned cold. Daughter, please don't blame me. Daughter, please don't blame me. And the worst part, is that they've hurt Zainab as much as they've hurt you. Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. With Imam Al-Hussainiya, Ya Ruqayya. MashaAllah, Ya Ruqayya. And as you marched, I watch afar. I feel I fail to keep you safe, to keep you safe. Entering Sham from Karbala, my daughter jailed with no escape. And as you marched, I watch afar. I feel I failed to keep you safe. Entering Sham from Karbala, my daughter jailed with no escape. The dust your bed, the dust your bed, they hear your screams. They bring a plate to you that isn't what it seems. The dust your bed, they hear your screams. They bring a plate to you that isn't what it seems. Your father's head, your tears they stream. It's time to rest, my love, I'll join you in my dreams. I promise you, my daughter, they'll do no more harm. I promise you, my daughter, they'll do no more harm. Let me wipe your tears, my dear. Come lay in my arms, lay in my arms, lay in my arms. On my face your tears dropped as your heart stopped. Hey, on my face your tears dropped as your little heart stopped. You'll see Fatima soon. You'll see Fatima soon. Tell her about Shimr. Hey, tell her about Shimr. You can complain to her and your uncle the moon. And your uncle the moon. Come home, my dear. Come home, my dear. We want you with us and we'll kiss away your pain. Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. Where's your voices? Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. صيح ويايا يا رقية. يا رقية يا رقية watched, I watch afar. I feel I failed to keep you safe, entering Sham from Karbala, my daughter jailed with no escape. الشاعر الأديب خادم سيدة رقية حيدر قزاز حبيبي. And as you're my arch, I watch afar. I feel I failed to keep you safe, entering Sham from Karbala, my daughter jailed with no escape. The dust, your bed, they hear your screams. The dust, your bed, they hear your screams. They bring a plate to you that isn't what it seems. Your father's head, your tears they stream. It's time to rest, my love, I'll join you in your dreams. I promise you, my daughter, they'll do no more harm. Let me wipe your tears, my dear. Come lay in my arms, lay in my arms, lay in my arms. On my face your tears dropped as your little heart stopped. You'll see Fatima soon. You'll see Fatima soon. I tell her about Shimr, and I tell her about Shimr. You can complain to her and your uncle the moon, and your uncle the moon. Come home, my dear. Come home, my dear. We want you with us, and we'll kiss away your pain. Ya Ruqayya, Ya Ruqayya. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي بالفضل العباس واخته زينب جميعا، ورحمة الله وبركاته. إلهي بمريض كربلاء زين العابدين يا رب عافي وشافي جميع المرضى، على خص من أوصانا بالدعاء يا الله. إلى أرواح أموات الحاضرين والجامعين والسامعين والمشاهدين، نهدي لهم جميعا ثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة، مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
Ahsantum mullah. Dear brothers and sisters, Adhamallah Ajurakum, a reminder that inshallah tomorrow the majlis will carry on with our dear esteemed guest Sheikh Azhar Nasser from 7 p.m. I need a massive favor from the sisters. We're 10 minutes over our time, and this hall becomes a hall for Salah Jama'ah for men and a men's majlis in Arabic. The sisters side